are served by the appraisal district. Not every taxing entity had a direct appointment, but most of the larger ones did. So we had a direct appointment. It actually was a council appointment. So, but y'all just got to choose who was going to be on the board to represent Temple. And that was the person who was appointed to represent our entity. Under the new process, a number of the folks are directly elected by the citizens of Bell County. So there's 4 seats that are just elected positions. Actually, 3 of them are elected at large from the county. And then one of the elected positions is the tax assessor collector. So in our case, Shay would be as his role as appraisal tax assessor collector, he also then has an elected position on the appraisal district board. And then the other 5 seats are then filled by the various taxing entities, but instead, because there's fewer and because they just revamped the whole system, instead of just some of the entities having a direct appointment, it's now a 2-part process where first entities nominate candidates for potential appointment to the board. So any of the taxing entities can nominate as many people for consideration as possible. You all did that, I want to say maybe 2 months ago, and you nominated the person who previously represented the city of Temple through your direct appointment, which is Sam Fulcher. And then various other, again, it doesn't matter how big or small, any taxing entity can nominate how many ever they wanted. So I think there was maybe 5 or 6 different folks that were nominated. Most of them were current board appointees who, again, had just that. Most other people did what y'all did, which is whoever was representing them previously, they appointed them to, or they nominated them to be reappointed. But now there's a second part of the process, and that is what you have on your agenda tonight. And now essentially it comes down to a vote in interest. So each taxing entity gets a percentage of votes based on their total tax levy. So the larger the tax levy, the more your vote counts, essentially. And so Bell County, with covering the entire county, their assessment, they have the highest number of votes, and then you can imagine, school districts and larger cities like Temple have more votes than smaller entities like some of maybe the smaller school districts or smaller cities within the area. But everybody has a vote on who gets appointed to the board. So your task tonight is to decide how to allocate the number of votes that are vote in interest, how many. So you can vote for 1 or more people. You can decide, you want to cast a third of your votes for one person and a third for another and a third for another, or you could put all of them in one basket for one candidate, or any combination that you can think of. With the only kind of boundary is the person has to have been nominated already in that previous process. So there's no write-in candidates, if you will. Staff's recommendation is for you all to consider using all of your votes for Mr. Fulcher. He's been a good representative for the city of Temple, and our recommendation is for you to support his continued service on the board. So that is what we would recommend tonight. But again, you could split up the votes. You could do, however is in your, whatever you feel like is best. And then basically at the end of the day, all of the votes are counted by all of the taxing entities that are served by the appraisal district, and the top 5 vote getters become board members.
How closely does Tracy work with Sam during the tax season?
Sam, as a board member, I mean, he doesn't. I'm speaking for Tracy, but she works much more closely with the staff. Staff to staff is a more typical. And when I was talking to Mayor about this, our previous representative was Skip Caruth, and he did a great job just voluntarily. He was very communicative with me and Tracy. He would send us notes after every meeting and meet with us after every meeting to debrief us. And in fairness to Sam, we just have Tracy and Nora have asked for that. I'm sure he would be willing to do that. if we ask them to. But it's really, our relationship is primarily with the staff. But it is nice to have a board representative, and I'm sure Sam would do that if we ask him to just keep us updated with, what was going on in the board.
That, and I know I can always reach out to Sam if I had a question, and a lot of, as far as what the board does, in the past few years, they've upgraded a lot of the technology that the Fraser District has. Skip was good with that too.
Yeah.
But things that I would reach out to Mike for, would be about the status of different lawsuits, major lawsuits that could be impacting on elections in our role. But I have a good reason, Sam is a very good representative.
Of course, the board doesn't have a direct role in assessing properties or anything. They're more there to help provide the budgetary and policy oversight for the district.
Some entities are not gonna get their people voted in properly, is that what's going on? There's more people nominated in different places that are gonna get a seat. Right?
I think there's 2 or 3 more people that all of the current board members could be, if they got enough votes, they could continue to serve, because there was one existing board member who is not interested in continuing on. So there would, if everybody who's currently on the board today wanted to be nominated and had an entity nominate them, then there would have to be a person kicked off the island, essentially. But because one of the existing board members is not in a position to continue to serve, you could see the exact same board makeup going forward, but it depends on how the votes turn out between the various taxing entities. And from my look at it, other than the current board members, the other people that were nominated by any other entity were council members or board members of their own entity. So like KISD nominated 2 of their trustees, Nolanville nominated 1 of their council members. So the only people who are on the nomination panel that are not currently on the board are direct representatives of the governing body already. So, which, apparently is allowable, but is, not apparently, it is allowable, but you don't have just citizens who, volunteer that are not already associated with the board. And then I think that, like I said, there's 3, I know Kevin Cook, Todd Scott, and there's one more person who's the 3 elected. I can't think of the third person.
Jared Bryant.
He's Jerry.
No, Jared-
Jared.
Is he rolled off?
No, Jared is a nominee for,
appointed.
he's an appointment, right?
Okay. Does that make sense? We have opportunity to cast 480 votes. They can be split up as we see fit. Recommendations that I concur with is that we cast all 480 for Mr. Hall.
And there's a total of 5,000, so amongst the different entities. And again, it's the way we get to the point of having 480 is that is our percentage of the total levy. And
The 480 represents Temple,
yes,
Yes.
and the 5,000 represents what?
all the votes that can be
Okay,
cast.
that's-
Mhm.
That was Bell County. Bell County.
When I was on the,
TISD has votes.
All the taxing issues have votes depending on their size of the levy, percentage of levy.
Yeah.
Okay,
County,
Oh, yeah.
Saline School.
counselors,
Yeah.
counselor staff, is there anything else on the agenda that needs discussion? Everybody okay?
We do have,
So we are going to set aside item P for voting.
Brian is prepared to go through, give you a preview of the zoning related cases, planning and zoning related cases. And then I think Aaron wanted just a quick minute to update you on a change she's proposing to the Northwest Hills neighborhood plan based on the feedback that you all gave us when we presented at the last.
Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. This is short because we've got one zoning case, which is a site plan PD amendment for Lot to Lot is looking to move from downtown to South First Street. So, but to own their own building, own their own property. So that's certainly a good thing. And then we have a plat. But before that, I'd like to introduce somebody that I've been able to introduce some of you that got here early. But Allison Couch, she is our new deputy building official. So we are so excited to have her because she's over permits and plan review. And as you all know, we've got great needs in that area. So we are so excited to have her.
So it's not for you to get down there and go to work. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you all for enabling us to hire her. So yeah, that's huge.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, so just very quickly, in terms of the Lot to Lot site plan, let's look at the location, Avenue L and South First Street. And so top right-hand corner, remember the property?
Was that taken down? There used to be a building on that, right? Because when I typed it in to Google, it showed a
I think,
white
wasn't it
building.
last summer? There was something
Yeah.
taken down?
Recently,
Okay.
but yeah, I don't remember how recently, but so the site plan, of course, this is the plan development general retail. And you may recall that there was a vertical mixed use project that came before you in the last year. Exciting project, but nonetheless, they decided to sell. But I think equally exciting, a downtown restaurant that has been successful enough to be able to buy their own building, well, build their own building, I should say, and own the property, Lot to Lot. And so about a 3,000 square foot building, have an outdoor patio, 320 square feet. And you can see access from South First Street, but also West Avenue L. The landscaping, redoing the sidewalk there is necessary. Dumpster location, all that good stuff has been reviewed by Planning and Zoning Development Committee. So I think it's a good thing overall. And then secondly, South Point Phase 5, you'll recall that this property was just rezoned. And just a reminder what that is. So the little strange shapes there, kind of switching general retail and single family to allow for this plat to be submitted. So we've got consistent zoning on all the lots and be able to have the residential where the residential makes sense, general retail where it makes sense. The reason it's before you all is the exception of the thoroughfare plan, reclassifying Case Road is no longer a collector, and also that connection to the loop. I think that was mentioned during the zoning case that just was not feasible. But during the presentation, you'll see that all the different access points will highlight that. There'll be improved entrances to meet the code. They've actually reduced the number of lots for this particular phase. So, this is be exciting, another phase for that South Temple development. And yeah, here just showing the various access points. And that is all that I've got. Do y'all have any questions?
Out of curiosity, how many lots? That subdivision? Oh,
About 310.
This is?
No, just overall. So the overall South Point neighborhood, about 310, down from 347, which was what was approved in the preliminary plat.
How many acres? I'll put you on the spot.
No, it's, if I were more prepared, I would know the answer to that, but, yeah, no, I don't recall if I can pull it up.
Yeah. I was just
Sorry, 331 to 370 is, if 370 lots were approved in, the preliminary plat, and it's 330.
Very good. Got anything for Mr. Chandler? Thanks, sir.
All right, thank you all very much.
Mayor, going back, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's actually the elected officials are Kevin Cook, Dr. Gudakonda, not Todd, Ashley Smith, and then again Shay Ludicky as the tax assessor collector. The current board members that are appointed by entities are Jared Ryan, Marvin Rainwater, Sam Fulcher, Dick Young, Todd Scott, and Joe Burnett. All of the current appointed board members are nominated for reappointment except for Dick Young. So again, all of them are up for reappointment except for him. And then in addition to that, Susan Jones, who is also Marvin Rainwater's on KISD Board of Trustees. Susan Jones is another KISD trustee. Kenny Wells, who's on WCID #1's Board of Directors, and then James Lynn Bilberry, who I think is on that are not, haven't served previously, that are on the nomination panel.
You have the Northwest Hills Neighborhood Plan on your agenda for consideration this evening. I just wanted to highlight page 33, and we provided you all with updated documents. Mayor Pro Tem Walker made some great comments about Salisbury Drive last time. And so we did take another evaluation of that, and also we made a suggestion for some bulb outs. And so we added that to the exhibit there, as well as some language of adding those bulb outs mid-block and at intersections to increase pedestrian safety. So I just wanted to comment. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But typically, about how far are those spaced apart?
It
Is
depends.
just
So
like a standard?
yeah, no, it just depends, you know, if you have parking, you know, sometimes
Sure.
you have 3 or 4 parking stalls in
Yeah.
between them. That's more of your like commercial areas, if you want, and it depends on how your landscaping is spaced out too, because sometimes they do it to space out landscaping. So we put mid-block since this is mostly residential, but some people just do it at intersections, and that's where the chicanes came from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long straight street.
It is, which is why we.
You said that
This
last
is
time.
the-
Yes.
The Bruce Walker amendment, that was the. For the plan.
Reading.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Thank y'all.
Y'all see thoughts or questions or anything on that? Y'all good with that?
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
And that is on the consent agenda for approval tonight, so.
Mayor, I would also like to point out on the agenda item, where is it? Well, I'm maybe wrong there. But anyway, downtown lighting. Yes. An interim phase 2, I believe, unless Buford tells me no, but yes, starting December 9th, they're going to install the lights on City Hall, HPO, the library, and then this side, and then along Central. So just basically right here,
So Main Street.
Main,
Center.
yeah, Central, sorry. And that will start December 9th.
And how long do you think that might take?
In about a week to 2.
So we'll have it for Christmas.
It'll be, unfortunately, we will not be able to make it in time for the Christmas parade, but thereafter, but yes, definitely in time for Christmas.
There's so much going on at Benedict Plaza, because I was telling Bren how amazed I was at everything that's happening in December. So I think that's gonna be a really nice extra.
It's been a long time coming, so I just wanted to point out, we're gonna have lights.
You did it.
Oh, well, not done. Where did I, is Buford here? Where is it? Okay, see, no, we're having a little, hiccup with getting the electricity installed, but we're working it out. It will happen. I'm telling you right here, on the record, right now, it will
See
happen.
Kathy on the ladder.
Yeah, I will. Don't tempt me. Okay, Jay.
General question, with the passing of Bruce Radcliffe, I'm assuming that someone is working on a new host for the.
They are actually meeting today, I think, about the MCs for the parade with KCE and
Okay.
So I'm not sure who it is yet, but
And I look at you like I would expect you to know. I don't know.
that's okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm here for your support.
Yes.
But
Y'all
yes,
working
I
on it.
think the special events team and the communications team are meeting with Casey Ian today.
Okay, good.
I do have a message for Chelsea. In her, chat with Kat about the parade, she recommended that dogs don't attend. My favorite part is waving to the dog. Just want to let you know.
Who recommended
Chief,
that?
Chief wants a dog, Chief.
Chelsea,
Who recommended?
Chelsea Butler, one of our event planners. She said they're allowed, but maybe it's not the best place for them. I'm like, oh, I love waving at them.
Yeah.
Sparky,
But people
Smokey
love
gonna
so
come
much.
back?
So I was told I couldn't bring Smokey, but Brenda says I can bring Smokey, so Smokey's right on top of it.
Yeah.
Monkey has been missed.
Okay.
A cat by you.
The red ones are-
I just don't want to come.
Not out. Okay. Legislative priorities,
Thank you.
item
Amy.
2, yes.
So Stacy and I are gonna tag team this presentation and she's gonna start us off. We want to remind you where we've been with the legislative program. And then I would like to give you the overview of what we're recommending based on the process we've been through so far for our legislative priorities. And then Stacy's gonna wrap us up, reminding us where we're going from here. We are already having a good time. I think there's over 1,900 bills that have been filed, and bill filing just started. So I was at a legislative update yesterday where someone said there are 20,000 bills in Ledge Council, which is the legal counsel for the legislature that drafts the bills. Now, all of those probably won't get filed, but 20,000 bills are in some process of being considered. So that is, that's a lot of bills. So with that, I'll ask Stacy to refresh us on where we've been, and then we'll talk a little bit about our plans for how we'll stay engaged in the session this year.
Thank you, Brent. Starting off, just have a little bit of a quick discussion about why having a legislative program is important for us. The biggest thing I think is local decision making is that it's really important that we do everything we can to try to influence our elected representatives to support the continued ability for the city to make our own decisions. So for you as our council to be able to make decisions for our community, because we know our community and know what's best for our community. And so that's our biggest priority and why we have a legislative program. And this is just really a graphic to illustrate that, we have, 3 elected, let me show 2 up there, but we have, this is, I think, meant to be the House, but we have 3 elected representatives, 2 House of Representative members and 1 senator. And so that's a small group that is representing a very large community. And so what we are trying to do with our legislative program is really to leverage not just the city's voice, but also we've established a legislative task force, and we want to use those people to help leverage our voice and have a greater impact and have more advocates out there that will be out there in supporting the city's, what's important to the city.
What I always like to point out with this slide is, if any individual, any one of us who lives in the city of Temple, you have the ability to vote for 40% of the governing body that makes decisions on your behalf. Because, as a resident of Temple, I get to vote for, my District 3 representative, because that's the district I live in, and I get to vote for the mayor. So I have a 40% say. I get to have a say in 40% of the people who make the decision. Whereas at the state level, I get to vote for my representative and my senator, which is it's really less than 1% of the total decision makers at the state level when you combine the Senate and the House. So the message here is just that we encourage one of our main goals with our legislative program is just to encourage our elected officials at the state to keep in mind that locals' decisions should stay local because we have a greater voice in our local community than we do at the statewide level.
The other thing, that I think we see a lot of times, in, legislation that passes is there is a reaction to something that, one of the largest cities in Texas, Houston or Austin or Dallas, or there's a reaction to something that's going on there. And so there's legislation that passes that's sweeping and impacts every single city. And so what we're trying to say here is one size doesn't fit all. So what's right for San Antonio isn't necessarily going to be right for Temple or Abilene or Muleshoe. So it is important that, we try to make our voice heard, and that we, can have that interaction with our elected officials and remind them of these things, because, they're up there voting on things and may not recognize the impact that it's going to have to a smaller community.
And if
It
there's
has
a
different politics,
perception,
maybe.
if there's a
Yeah.
perception that, and I'll just pick on San Antonio, if there's a perception that San Antonio is misbehaving, then go address San Antonio and leave Temple alone.
And this is really just saying the same thing, good governance. Again, it's similar thing to what I've been talking about. So when I first brought the proposal about a legislative engagement program, I shared with you these 6 program goals that we have for our legislative engagement program: to proactively engage in the legislative process, to protect the city's ability to govern and make decisions locally, to develop the city's legislative agenda, which we're going to share the draft agenda with you today, to engage community leaders to advocate for the city, engage with city staff in the legislative process, and to develop or enhance relationships with our elected delegation. So this is what we've done so far. So I came to council in March and presented the legislative engagement proposal to you all, got the go ahead. We being me and the mayor and Bryn, began working to select members for our legislative task force. Also began thinking about what kind of information did we think that our legislative task force members would need to have to be empowered to advocate for it. So we selected those legislative task force members in August. We had a 2-day really comprehensive information session for the members of the task force. Bryn presented a lot of important information, but we also had some of our key partners. So we had representatives from Temple College and Belton ISD, and we all just went out on, of course,
The chamber.
The chamber, exactly. So we had them come and talk about priorities, their priorities and what's important.
We do have some members on the committee. They didn't make a presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when we selected the members of the committee, we really wanted to help facilitate this as a community body that really helped not just City of Temple as an organization, but really our community. So we included representatives from the cities of Belton, those school districts, the college, some of our major employers like Baylor Scott & White, for example, the Chamber of Commerce, and just the county, just making sure that we had trying to have a very comprehensive representation on that committee.
So then in September, we really worked to draft our priorities. We had some follow-up discussions with the members of the task force to finalize those priorities. And here in October and November. So one of the things, Bryn just mentioned the number of bills that are out there pending potentially. One of the things at the very beginning that we said we felt like would be really important for us to have is a tracking software that will help us to prioritize and track all incoming bills that are going to be important for the city. We're going to use our priorities to help us establish those really important and sort of key
searches that we want to make sure that where any bill that comes in that deals with any of those topics, that we're aware of it and then we can decide what to do about that. If we want to take a real proactive advocacy approach, we can do that. So we did some demos. I asked a couple of the members of the legislative task force to serve on sort of an ad hoc review group with me. We demoed 3 different software tools. We've made a selection. We're almost through the purchasing part of that process. And so here today, this is where we're at, the presentation to council on our draft legislative priorities. The legislative task force, when we started talking about that, we envisioned that being a 12 to 15 community members. And like I said, the members did receive that orientation on all of the information we felt was critical for them to know so that they could be effective advocates for us. The list of the members is there on the left-hand side for you. And I'm going to pass it to Brennan.
So our draft legislative agenda that we're gonna ask you to consider, we've grouped into 7 focus areas. And I have a few slides on each area to just hit the highlights. As you all know, I've been talking about this for a really long time and I said I wasn't gonna do that. So our first area is local decision making. And again, this is really just the overarching kind of foundational issue for us is that we believe that supporting legislation that advances the principles of local decision-making allows locally elected officials to make decisions that are beneficial to the interest of our residents. And so we would suggest that our agenda includes supporting bills that further those efforts and opposing legislation that seeks to preempt or erode the authority that you have as the local decision makers for our community. When it gets, next area is revenue and budget authority. The general position statement we're recommending is to support legislation that reduces the overall tax burden on residents and businesses and oppose legislation that would detrimentally affect the city's financial position and limit local budgeting authority. And we have some more language there. This year, a little bit different than what we've asked you to do in the past. We've identified, I believe it's 12 different priority policy positions. So while some of this language is very broad and is needed to be, because as we get somewhere between 8 and 20,000 bills to look at, we won't be able to in this platform cover every single possibility of what would come our way. But what this legislative program is intended to do is to give me and our staff team the authority and the direction, the general direction from you about how to make decisions about supporting, opposing, or monitoring all of those 8 to 20,000 bills that we anticipate dealing with through the session. But that being said, we believe that there are some topics that we need to have to place a priority on, and that it would be beneficial if you specifically called those out in your legislative program. So we have identified those, and we're going to recommend the following 12. There's a few of them that are related to revenue and budget authority. And again, this was intended to be a comprehensive community platform and not just things that directly impact the city of Temple. The first one is a direct impact for the city, which is to oppose any new restrictions on the ability of the city to use COs for our public infrastructure program. The next 2 are really meaningful to our partners in public education. And that's to support an increase to the basic allotment for public education, which has not been done since 2019, and which, quite frankly, the state has a constitutional requirement to fund public education. And when they push that down to the local communities, that's what really causes a tax burden. So by encouraging them to appropriately fund public education at their level, which is their constitutional responsibility, that is the greatest opportunity for property tax savings and relief for our local citizens. We're also recommending that we support any legislation that would seek to change the statutory formula that currently uses average daily attendance in determining how much any given school district gets in state funding and move towards something more like an enrollment basis. The thought process here is that our school districts have to staff up and prepare to support students that are enrolled in the school. They have to have enough bus drivers, enough teachers, enough dietitians, enough counselors, enough custodial workers, enough desks and books and all of the things for every student who's enrolled in the district, regardless of whether they come a certain day or not. So while we do believe and support in encouraging programs that help enhance attendance, because that's important, obviously, for student learning, we would suggest that the funding formula is not the place to do that. As we turn our attention to supporting our community college partners at Temple College, they had a great session last time where House Bill 8 was passed that changed the funding formula for community colleges in the state. And it moved from kind of that attendance model to a performance model where community colleges in Texas are funded based on their outcomes rather than just who is filling a seat in their lecture halls or their classrooms. And because our community college is a very high functioning, high performing organization, they would be very well into that scenario. So they're just urging us to help amplify their voice of urging Congress. My gosh, the legislature to keep that performance-based funding model in place and to appropriately fund it for the next biennium, because it's great if you've got a funding model, but they also have to allocate the budget money to go towards that. There is one slight tweak that they would like to pursue. One of the elements of performance that they're funded on is their number of successful transfers from their community college program into a four-year university. And we believe this was just kind of a Scrivener's error, a mistake, something that really wasn't intended. But right now, it only applies to transfers to public universities and excludes transfers to private universities. And of course, while Temple College has great relationships with the public universities in our area and throughout the state, they also have great relationships, and we have some great programs here locally through UMHB and Baylor and other private universities, and they would like to see basically to get credit for those transfers as well in the funding formula. As it relates to economic development, we would urge supporting legislation that expands any current economic development tools and the ability to cities to eliminate one sales tax. Actually, that one I'm going to recommend we strike because we were successfully able to accomplish that. I'm sorry, that's a typo on my part. Economic development related to bills we would oppose. We would suggest that we would oppose any legislation that would take any tools out of our toolbox, that would erode any authority that we currently have related to economic development. And in fact, that would be one of what we would recommend be our priority positions, is just keeping, in particular, the three main local tools that we use here for economic development, those being Chapter 312 tax abatement agreements, Chapter 380 economic development agreements, and our programs through the tax increment financing reinvestment zone in place as part of our very successful here local economic development program. As it relates to land use regulations and annexation, we would still hold out hope that if possible, there would be some amendments to allow at least a certain level of local decision-making to return to cities regarding the regulation of building materials. And then in particular, any authority that would provide flexibility for voluntary annexation where appropriate, and would suggest opposing legislation that would diminish the city's authority to regulate growth and development through our land use and zoning regulations, our building codes, comprehensive planning, annexation, eminent domain, or any other tool that we currently have. One of the priority policy positions that we're recommending is supporting legislation that would allow a city to annex a rail line in order to bring a voluntarily requested area into the city. So again, not talking about any forced annexation, no unilateral involuntary annexation, but if there is a property owner who wants to be in the city and the only thing that's preventing them from being in the city is a railroad separating them from having a contiguous connection to the city that there would be flexibility in allowing us to move forward with that request. Council may recall that we successfully worked with Representative Shine last session to get this bill passed. It was probably the only time that I've ever been, and probably the only time I ever will be, until I retire and do something different. That's not quite so controversial, apparently, although I never knew that local government would be that way. But it's the only time I've been told in a legislative hearing that it was a good bill, anything I was trying to support. So we had broad-based support for it. The railroad industry was supporting it, and it was passed, but unfortunately it was vetoed by the governor, and kind of that got caught up in that kind of retaliatory school voucher. And Senator Flores has already filed a bill, refiled our bill, and so if you see him or his staff, I think that Chip might be here tonight. So we certainly appreciate their proactive stance on that, and we would urge you to consider that being one of our priority policy positions.
Was it just retaliatory, or did the governor have anything? Did he
No.
say anything beyond?
No, his note was that it was, I forget exactly what it said, but it was basically when you pass, this is not what he said, but the message was, when you pass school vouchers, you can refile this and I'll support it.
Oh, retaliatory. Thank you.
And that wasn't the only one. I mean,
Right. No, I understand.
Mayor Pro Tem Walker shared, Georgetown, his council has recently adopted their legislative program, and they had a similar, totally different topic, but similar circumstance where one of their priorities is to re-get this bill that we already got passed, but got vetoed because of, totally different reasons, that contract. So we're not the only ones dealing with that.
No, of course not.
For infrastructure and utilities, we would urge supporting legislation that increases funding for transportation projects, oppose legislation that would erode the city's authority to manage and control our public rights of ways, or limit our ability to get fair market compensation for use of that right of way, and monitor legislation that would affect the city's ability to provide utilities to residents. One of our priority policy position recommendations is to support legislation, if needed, that would allow for the injection of treated wastewater into injection wells for storage in aquifers. This is a project that you will hear back from us, I believe, in your December council meeting, where we are looking for some additional consulting support to help us walk through really what regulatory framework we need to propose here to make this possible. But this would help fulfill our goals around ASR, aquifer storage and recovery, to its fullest extent, to the most maximum and beneficial extent for Temple in the well that we are currently developing in Synergy Park. And then just obviously you have probably heard of the county's efforts related to seeking a legislatively authorized regional water authority. While at this point, it's not staff's recommendation that the city of Temple participate directly in that process, because we're going through our own process at this point. I will let you know, I hope you're not mad at me. I did offer a letter in support of their efforts, just that, coalescing around getting more water for Bell County and for our region is a good thing. Health and safety, we would suggest just keeping an eye on and monitoring any legislation that would affect public safety funding, tactics, or training. And for specific priority positions, we would recommend considering supporting legislation that would provide additional either state or local authority to regulate sexually oriented businesses. Actually, Mayor just shared with me, I didn't realize that Representative-elect Hicklin has already filed a bill related to this. So we will be working with her office to, assuming y'all adopt this recommendation, and we'll be working with her office to help advance that legislation. And then you may recall that last session, the legislature removed the ability for cities to have juvenile curfews. And when you talk to folks at the Capitol, there's a lot of confusion that they even did that or why they did that. So we think that there is a possibility that we could get that back in place. It is an important tool in, it may seem minor, but it is an important tool in Chief and his team's toolbox, and hate to see that have been taken away really without clear understanding of what the issue we were trying to address is. If we can learn more about that, then I think we could propose different ways to get to the root issue and still leave some of that authority that was important for our public safety efforts in place. Second to last, we would just urge that any legislation that provides additional technology or tools or flexibility in providing for transparency and convenience of attending public meetings be supported. And then always would recommend that the state is, as applies the Public Information Act and Open Meeting Act laws, that they require of you, that they also require those same elements of themselves. And then finally, on local advocacy, that we would support any bill that would allow us or support our communication with our legislative delegation in order to advocate effectively on behalf of the community. And we would oppose legislation that would limit that ability to communicate regarding important policy positions for the community. So just very quickly as a summary, our 12 priority policy positions are protecting our CO program, increasing state funding for public education, receiving more flexibility or changing how the statutory formula works for public education to move from an average daily attendance to an enrollment-based system, supporting fully funding the community college funding model that was adopted last session, and tweaking that program to include the transfers to private institutions in the funding formula as well. I'm sorry, I think I might have skipped this one in the presentation, but another priority position we have as a recommendation is to support legislation that would make whole communities that are disproportionately impacted by the disabled veterans property tax exemption. I attended a meeting about this earlier this week, and there are 4 bills, I believe, that have been filed thus far that would further the efforts in this way. One has been filed by our senator. One has been filed by one of our representatives, Brad Buckley. Those 2 are identical bills, so one in the Senate, one in the House. There's another House bill that's been filed by it's escaping me who filed it right now, but a representative more in the San Antonio area. And then and all 3 of those are identical. And then the 4th bill was filed by Representative-elect Hickland, and hers is not identical. It has some additional provisions that would preclude cities and counties who get the state funding from raising their property taxes in a year that they get the state funding. And we did talk through that with her at the meeting we had this week, and kind of suggested there was a particular city there that had gone through a tax ratification election this last year related to public safety, and it was a successful election. So the voters had approved a tax rate increase, and that city manager pointed out, that if this had been in place, they already get reimbursement for the disabled veterans property tax exemption, so they're already eligible. They're supporting other communities who need that tool in their toolbox, but that would have precluded them. They would actually have made the taxes higher for the local residents, because what they would have had to ratify was not just the tax they needed to support the police and fire initiative they were trying to get to, but also make up for the loss in state funding that they would not be eligible for because they raised their taxes that year, even though the voters approved it. So we hope, that she will kind of listen through and work through some of those, or perhaps, one of those 3 other identical bills will be the ones that move forward that don't have that provision in there.
What was her in talking with you?
She just indicated her goal was to balance taking care of our veterans, getting cities what they need, without it coming on the backs of property taxpayers. And that's why I think the comments from that other city were, I don't know, what she took away from it or not, but it to just highlight that it actually would affect them even more, not less, if they were precluded from getting the exemption, the state money in a year where the community chose to raise taxes for whatever reason,
So it was helpful, potentially helpful in meeting with her.
Sure, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I think so, yes.
Okay, good.
I don't want to take credit for that because that wasn't me that was saying that, but I thought the comments were, well,
And just
valid.
of note, this tax year, we're impacted by about $3.3 million
Temple is.
on exemptions for disabled vets.
I don't know that the bills that they have filed right now are going to be particularly helpful to us, at least without making additional changes on our end. And I don't even know if we could make enough changes to make a difference, but, and just as a reminder, the issue is that right now, to be eligible, you have to physically touch your corporate boundaries have to physically touch the boundaries of the military installation. So the amendment that's filed, right now, the bills that are filed, at least 3 of them, the senators and Chair Buckley's bill, they just removed that requirement that the city has to touch the military base. It just has to be in a county that is that has a military base or an adjacent county, and then then you also have to have at least a 2% impact on your general fund revenues. So what would be, I think, probably more appropriate if it was on ad valorem tax, which is the issue, because that's an apples to apples. Every city would be treated the same there, with it being worded as general fund. That what is in any given community's general fund varies from community to community. Some communities, like for us, we have a regional landfill. So we have revenues in our general fund that the city of Killeen doesn't have, even though they're a larger community, yes, because they don't run a regional landfill. So it would be more apples to apples if it was just ad valorem tax. But I did get the very distinct impression that there was no appetite for any amendments to the bills. They were going forward as they have been filed. And so while we would become eligible by being within the county that Fort Cavazos is located in, we would have to get to that threshold, that 3.3 million. We'll have to grow to a point that it's at least 2% of our general fund before we are eligible. So I don't think the bills as filed will help us, but they are meaningful to our neighbors, including Parker Heights and Nolanville, which are the two as on a percentage basis, not a dollar amount basis, because a city like San Antonio, for example, has a much higher dollar amount of impact because they just have a much larger city. But on a percentage basis, Nolanville and Parker Heights are the two highest impacted cities in the entire state, and they receive zero support right now, because while they have hundreds of veterans that are living in their communities, being conveniently located adjacent to Fort Cavazos and near the VA, they do not physically touch Fort Cavazos.
And how much would we have to grow that, the number, what, Tracy, the number you just gave, ballpark?
What's the general fund revenue? How much?
You have two things that, and if in the interest of time, we can bring this back in a more detailed conversation, but just generally speaking, either the impact has to get bigger or your general fund revenues has to get smaller. And
I thought the general fund had to get big. Never mind.
The disabled veterans property tax exemption impact. So the number of people living in our community who are eligible and are taking that exemption. Right now it's at 3.3 million. it would have to get, to a bigger number that would trigger that 2% of our revenues. Or
135.
the total revenues in the general fund would have to get smaller to make that 2% a smaller number to get to. And you think, well, we would never want our general fund to shrink, which of course we wouldn't, but there are some opportunities that, for other reasons, I don't think we would do it for this reason.
Right.
But there, we have talked, Tracy and I have talked, like, for example, the airport. At some point, the airport is a general fund division right now. And at some point, it may be appropriate for the airport to shift into an enterprise fund, meaning a business unit fund.
Right.
And so, and there's a couple of other elements in the general fund that are like that right now. That maybe at one time, again, I wouldn't suggest to do it just because of this, but if for other reasons and the whole picture, it makes sense, you may have,
We might accomplish that.
you may, yes. Or if you ever get to the point where, you get this bill passed this time, where it opens up the eligibility. The other thing they have to do is fund more, because the really critical thing right now is that they only budget $18 million for this program. So they're not making the cities that are already eligible whole. Like, they don't have enough money to make the cities that physically touch a military installation whole. So if they don't increase the amount that they put towards making them whole, and they just increase the number of communities that are eligible for the reimbursement, what is going to happen is the communities, Bell County, Killeen, and Coppers Cove, namely, who are eligible right now in Coryell County, they are going to get less money next time around, because even if you just look at our county, Nolanville and Harker Heights will then share in that 18 million. So they have to pair it with not just the legislation that opens up the eligibility. They have to pair it with a proper funding mechanism. And unfortunately, that number is likely to be significant. If they truly were going to fund the impact of the decision they made to start the program, which the problem is not the program. And I think that's an important message, is
I understand. The legislature rarely pairs things that they eat it.
I would be curious, I know that we don't have time, and Tracy, I know you don't have the numbers.
I do.
Well, it's my understanding, well, you might not, you're the one to ask you. It's my understanding that the percent of exemption, actual percent of property tax exemption follows the former military personnel's percent of disability, right? 80% disabled, they get 80% exemption. Question mark.
That's what I always heard.
Yeah, I think that's right. It wasn't,
I think there are ranges.
okay,
I don't think if you are 42% disabled, you get a 42%, but there's
Yeah.
a range that qualifies for a certain
all
percentage.
right, I would be interested to know the ranges, so you didn't have that, Tracy.
I know.
No, I'm moving on. And I would
It's 10 to
also-
30%.
Huh?
It's 10 to 30%, 31 to 50%, 51% to 70%, and 71% to 100% disability.
And there's some percentage though of exemption that follows those ranges. Right,
Yes.
Yes.
like Brent said, almost
It's a tier.
31% doesn't get 31%, okay?
It's tiered
I would-
within the percentages of disability.
Yes.
So this is a topic sometime whenever we have extra time in workshop, whatever that is. I would like to, that's interesting, so I'd like to know what percentages follow those ranges.
Okay.
I would also like to know, because it wasn't that long ago when that exempted amount, that actual ad valorem exemption dollar figure was $1 million, or around $1 million, 4 or 5 years ago. So I'd be interested to see the impact of, number one, of what just simply the increase in assessed values, which leads to an increase in tax dollars. What that is, like number of households that make up that 3.3. And are we in Temple seeing a growth in in the number of people that qualify for exemption living here versus Killeen, Harker Heights, Nolanville. I mean, are we getting a large increase in that population? Does that make sense?
Yes, I will say it increased 401 accounts compared to this year compared to last year.
So an increase of 401 households, taxpayers that are getting an exemption versus, well, I
Yes,
would say that's probably pretty significant growth
$730,000.
of the 3.3. Right, so that's what, 24% increase right there? I mean, that's significant, right?
It
That's
is,
something that we
it
need
is,
to
yeah.
watch as we build a community where that people, you know, they love where they live, right? Then you're gonna get more of those folks that are here that don't necessarily want to live that close to. I mean, I think that's something that we really need to watch because it's going to impact significantly more each year. And if the general fund revenue is 135 million, right? 2% of that is 2.7. And if we're at 3.3, then we already qualify.
That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah.
Brent,
What
what
appears to
what
be.
is the 2%? Brent? It's
The-
gonna be at least 2%?
General fund.
Of general fund.
2.7 million.
If the general fund is 1.5,
You
then
get the
that is.
delta?
Yeah, and we wouldn't have qualified, I haven't worked through those numbers with Tracy. It sounds like the 24% increase may have got us there, so maybe maybe the bill as filed will help us, yeah.
Does that just get us
Can
the
get a
delta
sliver
or
of the pie.
Yeah.
or well?
So
I know
Then
that's
it
been all of
depends
it,
on,
but-
what it does is makes us eligible for state aid.
mhm,
And then how much state aid,
so that 18.
then gets down to, well, how much are they, how much do they allocate,
18 million gets us that $20.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if they fund, what, we would urge is if the fiscal note is, and I'm just gonna make up a number, if the fiscal note is $300 million, then they should fund $300 million so that if the city of Temple is 3.3 million, that we get, and I think it's 98% of that or whatever, we would otherwise be. And the message, again, the important thing, cannot stress this enough, is that I think all of us are grateful to our veterans and we are not attacking the program.
No.
The issue is that it is a statewide benefit that the entire state voted on offering. And so the importance is to make sure that the state, this is one of those things where pushing it down to the local level doesn't make sense. It's a statewide benefit. It should be paid for at the state level so that all of us, whether we live in Killeen, that it has a super high impact, or we live in Harlingen, or wherever we live, we are grateful for the sacrifices our veterans made. We pay for that at the state level. That is the bottom line here, is that it's a state benefit that, got implemented without a state funding source. And trying to fix that is harder to fund something that already exists when someone else has been paying it for you, than it is when you paid for it yourself from the beginning.
Does anybody else care to learn the details of that and its impact on Temple in the numbers, which is what interests me?
Mhm.
Or, okay,
Yeah.
I got at least 3 on it, so, okay.
Well, because if we, it sounds like learning it will be, useful to the, legislative, ad hoc committee.
Yeah, as we move forward, as bills are
Well, right,
working through the
yes.
process, yeah.
I mean,
So-
that information is more impactful than just the words of saying, let's try to push this forward. This is why we want to push it
Yeah.
forward.
And I think that might be a great segue into what is next for us, is we are currently working on developing white papers, for lack of a better word, that give detailed information about these 12 priority positions. So that you as the council, are members of the legislative task force, other community leaders, just any interested citizen who wants to be informed would have, 2 to 3 pages of information, so not a dissertation, but enough information on that topic that you could become very well educated on why it is a priority position paper, what the impact we are using. We're seeking to use specific examples so we can really bring, attention to the city of Temple, what this would do, or, how it would be beneficial or detrimental, depending on if it's something we're supporting or opposing. So our goal is to have those in place for you and for the community, and to share with our delegation, our senator and our two representatives and others that might be willing to listen to us. So we are well on our way to developing those in anticipation that you would agree with us that those 12 issues are the ones that we should consider our top 12 priorities. And again, we will bring to you at the next council agenda the actual legislative program, so that the paper that gives me the authority then to say support a bill or oppose a bill, we would ask for you to consider adopting that at your next meeting. And then what I've asked Stacy to help support is to getting those communication tools that she's got listed there, which is what those kind of white papers or talking points or educational papers, as well as the quorum system she talked about, which is the tracking software. All of that kind of up and running by the end of this calendar year. So as the session begins on January 14th, we are equipped and ready to go, and ready to advocate for or against bills as they come up in committee or otherwise. And so that is our plan to get those documents together between now and the end of the year, or finalize those documents there. Stacey's already been working on it.
And then will Stacy come back once a month or at each council meeting and kind of give us an update on where that all stands with 20,000 bills?
Sure. Part of what I was planning for council is, and for our legislative task force, is a periodic sort of email newsletter. I've worked with communications and marketing to develop a tool for that. But yes, I can absolutely come back as frequently as you'd like, once a month.
Yeah, just be curious to
Absolutely.
see, where we stand and how things are progressing.
Absolutely.
My question.
Yeah.
I did
If I can make one more point before we segue totally out of this. I think it's also important whenever we're talking about the veterans exemption also, is that the lack of funding and the fact that in sort of the narrowly written requirement that you touch the military base causes issues amongst communities. There was an opportunity at one point for Harker Heights to annex over in basically a flagpole type situation like we've done before, to actually touch the military base, and the city of Killeen blocked it.
Right.
Because had they been able to do that, then Harker Heights would have gotten a piece of that very small
Some of
pie,
Yeah.
right? And that's not good either, right? Causing, sort of that strapping conflict. Literally like us in Belton, right? Harker Heights and Killeen, they, a road separate, whatever the city limit sign is, that is a one community, and it's caused strife amongst those cities. And that's not good as a community either. So I think it's important that, in some ways, if you think about that, Killeen could fight an expansion of those that are eligible, right? Because they don't want Harker Heights or any other adjoining community to get any of the pie.
Well,
So-
they well may.
Yeah, exactly. So we think to us, it makes sense. Of course we want to get, well, Killeen probably doesn't want to do that.
Sure.
So
They
just
just need the bigger pie.
one more thing. Yeah. Yeah, fully funded. If you're going to send it down, fund it.
And both,
But they never do.
well,
Of anything.
both Senator Flores and Dr. Chair Buckley have both stated very clearly that they have a mechanism. I think of it kind of like if you think about, sometimes you have an agenda item where we're asking you to approve something, and as a secondary action, you have a budget amendment attached to it. So approve this item, and here's this budget amendment that funds this item. they have a similar mechanism in the state process where you can essentially, contingent action. So both of these things have to pass or neither of them go into play. So either if the budget amendment, that's not what they call it, but for simplicity, if the budget amendment doesn't pass, then the bill becomes not, it doesn't go forward. And if the bill passes, if the budget amendment passes, but for some reason the bill doesn't pass, then the budget amendment doesn't go forward, they go together or not at all. And I think that is absolutely their intent. So I don't think what we'll see is a bill that gets through without funding. But I think that the absolute challenge is going to be getting them both through, because the funding is going to be, no one would, I don't think you would have hardly any argument with the bill itself, because it's like, oh yeah, whoever wants to be eligible for the 18 million, go ahead. That's not the problem, right? The problem is the 18 million. So, so it's really, and that's why, at the Senate, the committee it goes to is the Finance Committee. They did have an interim hearing on it. That's a positive sign that they specifically put it on the agenda for interim hearing at the Senate. So, I think there's a path. What I don't know, because it's not been released yet, is what the fiscal note's going to be, which comes from the comptroller's office. And that will be very critical in the success of the bill, or the lack thereof. Because if the fiscal note is super large, then that's a heavy lift.
There's, everyone knows the state has a huge surplus, but I don't know that this exemption issue is that high up on the list of priorities whenever you come to water and power, right? Which are super expensive priorities, and those are priorities. So, you got however many $1 billion sitting over there, which sounds like a lot, but once you start covering the whole state with other priorities, there's not that much left. So, could be an issue. Wilson.
I do just quickly want to say that Stacy has done a great job, like an exceptional job in the work she's done on this program so far. She has already created good working relationships with all of the staff of our elected officials, which is so important. Having the ability to work together well at the staff level just helps to make getting things done, that much easier. And I've already sent her, I think, to 2 different hearings for me that she graciously attended and took notes and, was prepared to represent us. So one thing that I know I've talked to you guys about in the past is the struggle I've had with just it just kind of being me and the onslaught of bills that come at you in a very condensed amount of time. It's very hard for me to keep up with that. And so I've already felt a huge relief in the assistance from Stacy, and this is just one of the other duties that's assigned almost. But I really appreciate the effort that the work she's done, and I think we're going to have a much better program this year than we've ever had because of being intentional about getting the task force set up, getting these papers in place, and being ready to respond as bills. The quorum tracking system that we're going to implement, I think that'll all help us. And I've said this to many folks, but the important thing to remember for everyone is that while the state representatives don't really want to hear from me, right? They don't want to hear from the person who's the paid staff member, right? So I think our role, through Stacy's work and our work together is to help get information into the hands of community members who are more impactful messengers to our elected officials. So we have the information, they have the voices, we need to connect those things together so we're more effective.
And, you briefly saw that list of the task force members, and these are really active people in the community. Brandon, the mayor, spent a lot of time trying to think of strategically the right people to put on the task force. And I think we have a great group through those 2 days. They're all really busy people, but for those 2 days that we brought them together for the learning sessions, they were all really engaged, lots of good feedback and conversation, questions. And I think we've got a really good group that are ready to get out there and advocate for us when we, put out the call. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm gonna move item 4 up to now. We bumped at our last meeting, we bumped, communication and marketing and fire. And so let's go ahead and hear their presentation now. And Tracy, and now I texted Tracy and told her this about 4 seconds ago. So is this okay? Is there something that we just?
As long as Heather doesn't go over her 2 hours.
The only thing I would say, Mayor, is that your approval of the financial results is an agenda item. So there is a time sensitivity to it that is not that I don't want you to hear from the department.
No, I
but there's
understand.
not a time sensitivity.
So Heather says, Tracy, as long as you don't go over your.
Tracy can take as much time as she needs.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't.
I would rather Heather go first and then I'll.
No, let's go. If this is an agenda item, let's go ahead and stick with the agenda then. Let's do item 3 first. Sorry about that. We've asked previous permission.
Stacy, can you dim the light?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present the fourth quarter financial. Is there maybe one more you can turn on?
On or off? On. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Lee.
It's too dark.
And then the back one.
And then, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Pleased to present the fourth quarter financial statements for the year ended September 30th, 2024. Looking at our revenue pie, total revenues came in at $133 million, a little over that. Usually sales tax is up in the 30% area. It's 28.39% of the total. Ad valorem taxes right under 18%. Solid waste 15.31%, and that does include, I believe, the landfill too. Intergovernmental 10%, and I won't go all the way down through the different revenue sources. Looking, our revenues ended the year, the 133 million budget was 135 million. We're at 98% of budget. That hasn't happened in several years. And if you look, as we reported early in the third quarter forecast, we thought we were going to be about $2 million under in sales tax. We ended up about $1.5 million under. Property tax, we're less than budget, and that has to do with some adjustments to the tax roll. And I'm going to go through the detail of these other variances as we go through, but almost 2.4 million below budget here. And as I go through the presentation, I'll explain more of that too. Here are our revenues, more or less than budget. Normally sales taxes on the far right or far left side. This year we're under budget. Typically the last 4 years we've been way over budget. On the far left side this year, interest revenue is still one of the ones that performed greater than the budget, but not as much as it did the year before. As rates were rising, we did increase the budget. And I am so proud of the golf course. I wish Jeff was here. He used to be on the far right, and look where he moves. Doing great at the golf course. And also building permits and license, also one of the ones greater than budget. Fines, I think our traffic patrol is fully staffed now.
Not fully staffed, but
But
we're
staffed.
staffing back up.
Right. And when it hasn't, with vacancies in the police department, that hasn't been staffed, but we're starting to see that You're back up.
So we're assuming, or expecting fines to go back up.
Yes.
Get people on Fifth Street. There's lots of speeding there.
Looking at sales tax again, statewide cities were just below 2% for the year. Belton and Georgetown, they had larger increases than the city of Temple. And then on the far right, Georgetown, Harker Heights had a decrease and compared to the previous year. And just to note, we were under budget, but we still had an increase in our growth compared to last year, but it wasn't as much as we budgeted. I want to take some time to
We anticipated more, even though we still had an increase.
Right. Now, I want to go back here. When I showed the 2-point-something million under budget, if you look at two line items, one is transfers from the reinvestment zone for different projects or work to be done in the zone to the general fund. And also we had booked a receivable for damages from TML from the tornado.
Right.
Those totaled 1.5 million and we carried that revenue forward. So if you did revenues net of encumbrances, it would only be short of budget about 600,000. And that's in this other, I did the red line with net of encumbrances. So it wouldn't be that 2.5 million.
Oh, good.
Sales tax. This chart shows historically, if you look back in 18, we were less than 1% growth. I'll know the story starting in COVID started in 2020, 2021. We're still thinking, sales tax is going to slow down, but we had all the stimulus and Temple's continued to excel in growth, building development, commercial and residential through the years. And we had a year of 16%, 14.8, 12.2, and we were expecting it to slow down in 24. So we only budgeted 8% increase and it increased 3.49%. And looking how did we do 2025? We only increased our budget by 0.23% above what we ended the year at. So we made that adjustment. This kind of crazy month to month. Remember back in January, we got an extra 1.5 million from a major taxpayer, and then they took it back the next month. So no, it's not.
Reminder's detail.
Yeah.
Tracy, can you go back one slide? And I had this discussion with one of the mayor, but question about we've had, as y'all know, and I told you that the 2025 budget year was fairly tight. We didn't get to add everything that we had hoped that we would have been doing this time last year in our business plan. And I just wanted to point out that we I don't know how to say this correctly, but we course corrected for the sales tax differential in 2025. So you see that basically it is a flat budget. So the question of what if you may have a question in your mind, what happens if this keeps happening? If we continue to not have growth? Well, we already budgeted for as if we're not going to have growth. So as you know, we try to be very, very conservative in budgeting. So, while it wasn't a fun budget year, I don't anticipate that we're going to have a year where we're having to actually cut things in the year because we budgeted conservatively for what whatever happened last year is going to happen again going forward.
The 6-year budget is reflecting that.
Yes,
it is.
We have received one allocation for FY 2025. And I think it was either a 9 or 10% growth compared to last year. So, but that's 1 month. So any questions on sales tax? Good. oops. Also looking, a revenue highlight is looking at our percent of collections. Every year we're 98 to 99, 97% of the levy. But this year it is a little bit lower and there are some adjustments to the roll. With a lot of the disputes that are filed, there's lawsuits that continue on, and that's been part of some of the adjustments. Expenditures by type for the general fund totaled $136.8 million. 56% of that personnel, 28% operation, and a little over 10% capital. We ended the year at 136.8 million, and the budget was 153 million. That's 89%. But if we add, and that's a positive variance of $16.5 million. But if we add in our encumbrances, it puts us at a favorable variance of 5.8 million. So we were under budget in the revenues, I show the detail here. But the encumbrances are also an agenda item where you carry forward those into the next year. And what are encumbrances? They're open purchase orders or contracts. They're commitments that we haven't received the goods or services, so we roll that forward into the new year. Expenditures less than budget. Again, net of encumbrances. Last year that was 6.4 million. This year it's 5.8. You look, the darker is last year, the pinkish color this year. Our lag personnel less than budget, still a little over $3 million, but less than what it was the previous year. As with the compensation adjustments, et cetera, we're staffing, we're different departments that struggled or getting staff back to full staffing. And then our operating less than budgets will similar to what it was last year, a little under 3 million. And I wanted to go back and show historically to by department personnel net of encumbrances what it looks like. You know, for 2 years, the police department has been, I think one time y'all got up to 30 something.
31, 32.
Yeah. And now you're fully staffed.
Now we're 4.
That come a long way.
Yes,
So we don't expect to see that next year.
that's okay.
Yep, and that's good. That's our goal. But we do budget our personnel at 100%. And each year there's different departments for whatever going on with staffing or retirements you'll see different departments on the far left. And of course, police and fire are our largest staffing and expenditure budgets too. Then I wanted to go into when we reflect back on FY 2024. We all know May 12th and May 22nd, what that meant in the city of Temple and how did that impact our finances. And I presented this last quarter too, but for the storm cleanup with G&J, we had a total of 4.3 million. Monitoring and consulting services with Tetra Tech, 944,000. We had some other storm damages to date, 494,000. And we had labor to date on the storm of 666,000. So we had costs to date $6.4 million related to the storm. And I asked the chief earlier, some of y'all might know, I don't recall it in 32 years of a tornado to that magnitude in Temple. Sure. I mean, it's an extraordinary event. We're anticipating a reimbursement from FEMA of $4.5 million. Tetra Tech has been super duper helping us get all our ducks in a row and paperwork and managing that reimbursement. I think we've had FEMA auditors here for the last, I think this was the second week they've been in our area. TML reimbursement. We've got a lot of insurance claims, but we've actually been reimbursed to date $375,000. So our net cost out of pocket in the city of Temple was about 1.5 million. And remember, again, this was an extraordinary event. That doesn't occur. We hope it don't occur often.
How does this relate number wise ballpark, not line by line, but ballpark to the ice storm?
Oh, the ice storm was nothing, the 6.4 million.
Okay.
I could ask my staff, they could,
No, that's okay.
they'll probably text me with the number here in just a second. Tell you what it is.
I thought it would be close.
Yes.
And Tracy, does this include, like, for example, I don't think it does, because it's not a direct storm labor, but like, for example, the services that we've like hired for permits and inspections to help us with our backlog, the outsourcing we've done of inspections.
It's not, no, it's not.
Because it's not necessarily
pretty
directly
direct.
tied here, this is just direct expenses. But, you know, if you started digging into even some more of the more kind of indirect, because we had thousands and thousands and thousands of roof permits and other, you know, repair permits and some of the other costs we try to take on to, you know, not have our permit get so behind. That's not even incorporated in this number, I guess what I'm trying to say. So there's been other maybe less direct, but still impactful things to our budget related to what happened to them.
Again, this is just showing that 6.4 million. Our share was the right under 1.5, but less than 25%. FEMA 70.81 and TML 5.85%. Now, Belinda and her staff have done, and Kathy and her staff with the insurance, working with TML adjusters, et cetera, have done a great job with all the damages to city facilities. And of course, Justin and his staff, Public Works, has cleaned up. So with all of that said, we, each year and by policy, we increase our rainy day fund. And with that positive variance, we increased our rainy day fund by a little over $3 million. And with that catastrophic event, we did not touch our rainy day fund, but increased it. And we used 3.9 million for the FY25 budget. And October 1, we set it a little over $1 million in undesignated, unallocated. And if you see the past 4 years, that balance was significant, and it had to do with the COVID monies and the sales, being over budget on sales tax of 3 to 4 million. But this year, and our budget is set for FY 2025 to move forward with, and it is set good to move forward with that 1 million.
And what Tracy tells me, and y'all, some of y'all have heard this from me, is that, and that available October 1 balance, you know, if I had a magic wand, you know, we don't really want it at the levels that we had it the last few years, because you want to get that money back in. You know, you don't want to just sit on it. You want to get that money back in to useful purpose, buying equipment, you know, getting it. So our goal isn't to have that level. That was really, as Tracy said, as a result of COVID grant money and conservative budgeting, because we wanted to make sure we undershot than overshot. But you know, one thing that Tracy has told me, so I'll tell you, is like, you don't have any money. If it's not budgeted, you don't have money, Brent. So don't come ask me for $1 million here and $1 million there. What is it, Susan, Miss Moneybags?
Money bags.
Moneybags.
Tracy is money bags.
So
No longer is Tracy money bags.
and we I don't say that, I say that jokingly. We have a very strong financial position. Again, we went through a major natural disaster and not only did we not need to dip into our rainy day balance, but we added to our rainy day balance. So, I guess I always say, when we talk about that rainy day balance, it has to be raining pretty hard. It has to be storming pretty hard for us to hit into it. And I say, I guess you can weather a tornado around here before you need that rainy day balance. So I feel proud that we were able to manage that event through our fund balance. But again, it is important to note that, if it's not in the budget, we probably don't have the flexibility to do it this year. It's got to get in the budget.
And we've tried back in, I guess for 3 years, we didn't have to increase the rainy day fund. But I don't think we had to last year, but we went ahead and did some. But this year it's a $3 million adjustment. So any questions on that? Good. Water and wastewater revenues, ended the year, 97% of budget. We had, a very wet spring, as we all know, and come into even June. And then it turned off hot and dry the rest of the summer, but water was at 94%, wastewater at 97%. Effluent, we did, it is over budget by 321,000, but again, the total operating revenues under budget 1.9 million. Looking at the expenditures, total operating expenditures at 97%, under budget 1.5 million. Hotel motel fund, ended the year. Revenues are at 107% of budget, expenditures at 82%. It did have some encumbrances in this, carry forwards in this amount. So we didn't add the total $1 million to the fund balance net of encumbrances. I wanted to take a look at hotel motel fund revenues just historically. Here we had the pandemic, the hotels shutting down. But prior to that, we were growing, the year before we grew nearly 11%, started recovering in 2021, 2022, 35% growth, 2023, 21% growth, and slowed down some last year, but still growth at a little less than 6%. I think I saw some plans and permitting for a new hotel, right? 117 beds.
Yeah,
Where?
it's over by, off of Scott. So we're just the parcel just to the north of Candlewood Suites.
Okay.
That'll be a good one.
To the north of oh,
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
the last tract there in the
Wow.
district.
good.
Again, that just looks at revenue receipts historically comparing the prior years for hotel motel tax receipts. I wanted to show occupancy rates here. It doesn't show a lot of a big fluctuation from prior years, even when the revenues have went up. So I would attribute that to a higher room rates versus more occupancy, with the exception of FY 2020. Drainage fund, revenues ended the year at 103% of budget, expenditures at 72%. Some of this 893,000 does have encumbrances in it. But the drainage fund revenues, they reached the $3.3 million. And again, these revenues are mainly for the maintenance and operation of the drainage fund, or the drainage systems, not necessarily for capital. We do, when we accumulate the fund balance, those are applied to some capital projects. Federal and state grants, we still show, until we get the pass-through agreement totally paid off, it'll still show up on here for the construction of the Northwest Loop 363. But out of our $70.4 million worth of grants, the 0.77%, transportation, that next one's transportation 2 of 23%. And then as you see still the coronavirus, state and local recovery funds, public safety 9.28%. And we had this year the Texas Military Preparedness Commission grant, a little over $5 million. We managed that for a project on Fort Hood. This just goes into more detail on the transportation grants. And Jason Deckman, I don't know if he's listening, he plays a big role in getting a lot of those monies. We did have $540,000 of grant money for the east-west gateway up here, the landscaping development. Investments, we saw rates beginning going up. Now they're starting to go back down. Our 90-day T-bill is our benchmark. It's at 4.52%. Our portfolio today is currently at 5.09%. A year ago, it was at 5.27%. Total investments are $390.5 million. 84% of that's in government pools, 13.54% in CDs, and 2.28% in cash. And again, this just shows our key rates, what our portfolio is earning, and what our benchmark is. The 90-day T-bill. Capital improvement program, we're at $580 million. And this shows by funding source, COs, 34%, reinvestment zone 31%, utility revenue bonds 22%. I'll go through all of those. And I wanted to show this is status based on dollars. 50%, over 50% is under construction or in progress, 21% in engineering, a little over 18% projects actually complete, and 9.5% in planning. But I want to show is, each time we said this is our largest CIP, but this shows it historically at the end of the year. It's our largest was 2023 point in time. And a lot of these that are completed will roll off, and then we'll add the new 2025s. And my last slide, the strategic investment zones, we have two total allocated to date, almost 2.4 million, expended or encumbered a little over 1.9 million, for a remaining balance of 465,000. And there is one pending application as of November 15th for $24,200. And that concludes the year-end financial report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. You'll get to hear the audited report in February. My auditors, they're in and out now.
Very good. That's a lot. I was aware of those numbers regarding the storm. And it's, weird to say, but it's exciting to see that it was all handled without getting a rainy day. Again, that goes back to sound management. And over years, right? You didn't luck out a couple of years, right? We've been doing this forever. And so good job. And I know that you're the master of that budget, and under your management, we've weathered many storms, as they say.
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my staff, and to the credit to the department heads that we work side by side and work together. Bryn's leadership.
And I think I've said this to all of you individually. I can't remember if I've ever said it in public though, but I think the tornado was Wednesday night, right? And on Friday morning, we had the team from DNJ here to go through. They flew in, we called them that night. Actually, Wednesday night, they were able to get here early morning, Friday. And we were in this room talking about it, and I stepped out to call Tracy to, basically what my position wanted to be was, yes, let's make sure we can maximize getting FEMA money, but no, let's not delay the response to the community. And so I left the room to call Tracy to make sure she would help me get the money. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, how great Tracy is and her team is, but Tracy in particular about, her answer was absolutely do what you have to do to get them here, to get started on the cleanup. And we will have your back on getting the money, and they, as you can see, they have maximized and will continue to maximize our reimbursement so that the local community, doesn't take on an undue burden. But she was absolutely, 100% on board with, yes, do what you've got to do to get the cleanup started, get the responses here for our community. And I don't think that necessarily happens with every financial director, CFO that you run across.
That's why we have money bags and they don't.
There's always a way for what, the community needs, and Tracy and her team find it.
I spoke at Temple College real quickly yesterday, and my opening line was that I love being the mayor of Temple. And one of the main reason is because we are able to respond to the community immediately, right? And I think one of the things I said was, I wouldn't want to be mayor if all we were doing was fixing potholes, right? Or going into debt and trying to figure out how to clean up after a storm. And done it. And we, I almost said we should be proud. Council members, we are not proud. As ourselves, we're proud of the staff that's here
Exactly.
and has been assembled and led, top to bottom. And so it's great to be on the council here because we have good, smart, responsible, forward-thinking, hardworking people. Again, top to bottom, not just the people in this room, right? Communication and marketing was sitting right there that night at the EOC, getting information out to the community as fast. Everyone plays their part. And that's fun to watch. It's cool to watch. And I'm proud of you guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Council plays, you guys deserve the credit. You said not us, but truly, without your support of the leadership, the policy direction, and the resources, wouldn't be able to do it. So
But how often do
when
we
you
hear?
say top to bottom, y'all are the top and y'all are included.
I understand, but we often hear staff recommendation. And we roll with that. So
Yeah, but not every council does.
Yeah, but we
So,
think about it.
I think, there's something
Good
that
point.
not every council does.
I think it's really important to understand that we don't just say, oh, staff recommends that, let's do it.
Right.
We ask staff why. And what makes it that?
Staff always has the answer.
Exactly. If they didn't have the answers, we wouldn't
Who
we
wouldn't
wouldn't
ask?
ask.
we can get our hands off of that. Again, thank y'all for everything. Tracy, thank you for the positive report. Very much.
Thank you.
And now let's move on. If staff has recommended we move on to item 4, so we'll start with the communication and marketing. Thank you, ma'am.
Our Gen Z department.
Okay. Stuff like millennials in there, okay. It's happening. Thank y'all for having me back. The way that I'm going to present to y'all today is by division. We have 4 divisions in communications and marketing, so I'm going to take you through each one. I tried to keep it with just the highlights, especially now that there's 4 departments presenting today. So I am going to go pretty quickly. However, if there's something on your brain that you want to know about and I don't mention, please stop me or ask me at the end. So first off is our marketing and digital media division. We've got Brenda, Alexis, Lindsay, Ambry, and Garrett. So one of the things that they've been working on is a sponsorship guide, and we have started with special events where working really closely with Holly and her team. But the vision here is that the City of Temple develops a comprehensive sponsor guide, not only of special events, but of other department sponsorship opportunities that we can visit local corporations and organizations with, to provide them a guide so they can see all opportunities available. So we're working on this right now. It should be completed here in the next month or so. The other thing that this division is responsible for is attending job fairs and holding our hiring events. So the second hiring event that the City of Temple did was in September, and there was 325 attendees, which was actually really good because we only did one shift, and the last one we did 2 shifts, and we had the same number of attendees. So we're kind of getting used to what is working for people and what I think the community likes out of that. 5 interviews were conducted and 3 conditional offers were made at the hiring event as well. And then we also attended with HR the Workforce Solution Graduate Pathways Job Fair back in April. We did the Spouses Fair in May on Fort Cavazos, and then we did their Mega Job Fair in June. We also went to the Workforce Solutions First Responder hiring event. And then lastly, most recently, we did the Red, White, and U job fair on Fort Cavazos. So this division also is responsible for internal communications within our organization. And these are just some of the highlights. So I think last time I presented to y'all back in April, I shared the new employee newsletter. Well, it's been very successful. And it actually has a read time of 8 minutes, which if you think of people's attention spans, 8 minutes is pretty great. It is an award-winning employee newsletter, and there's about 360 average readers when we send that out, which is, I think, I don't know the numbers, but I think almost half of the people who have a city email. The other thing that we're doing as it relates to internal communications is our department is going to be working on a training for any leadership or other city staff who work closely with us. But we're going to go over branding training, what our brand box is, which is a resource for city employees. We'll talk about best practices with social media, graphic design, so that way they can understand some of our policies a little bit better, the processes and why we do things the way that we do, or why we might need things a certain way or request things a certain way. So we're excited to bring that training. And then the last thing that we did as it relates to internal communications was we presented at 3CMA, which is a national conference. This is us, Lindsay, myself, and Ambry all presented on internal communications. We called it the Forgotten Platform. We called our presentation the Forgotten Platform because a lot of organizations think we need to push stuff out. We need to let everybody know. We need to promote the service or product or whatever. But not a lot of organizations forget that they need to talk to their people too. And that's another communication platform essentially. And it was one of the top 3 attended presentations for that national conference. So we're really proud of that. And then the snippets on the bottom are just some feedback that we got from attendees after we got home from the conference. Okay, so this division also is responsible for most of the city's social media. I think when a lot of people think of social media, they think, oh my God, that's so fun. You must have the best job ever. You get to be creative, make fun videos. But really what I wanted to do with these next few slides was also show the strategic side of communications as it relates specifically to social media. So the next few slides demonstrate that. So the first one is high performing organization. So what we did was this reporting period is April to October. So these were the most popular posts that we did that represent high performing organization in that time period. So one was the hiring event promotion. This in the middle is Noelle doing Behind the City, which I'll show a clip of that a little bit later as part of a montage video. And then the most, not surprising, but the most engaging and most popular post as it relates to high performing organization was all of the storm cleanup and thanking all of the city workers who worked during that time. For smart growth, we did a traffic advisory for Old Waco and Carver. And then we did this Let's Talk Temple. Our Let's Talk Temple video series is very popular as well, where we give project updates. But the one we did for City Center got a lot of engagement. And then the most popular one probably isn't super surprising was our Kegley Road improvement project update that we did, excuse me. For places and spaces, oh, I forgot to mention, all of these snippets are City of Temple Facebook. We didn't pull any data from any other pages with the exception of places and spaces, because that's mostly Parks and Rec or special event focused. So Temple Parks and Rec, where we're trying to do more of parks, amenities, and quality of life type things on our page, since we now have a special events page. And so this is a really good example of the community engaging with that. So that's what this post on the bottom is. We have an arts and culture master plan representing places and spaces. And then the one over there is, again, storm damage related, but it's when the dog park reopened. That was a very popular post. For public safety, on the city's page, most engagement, we had D&J Enterprises actively working. We had a boil water notice that was going on in September. And then again was storm damage, us providing information on numbers to call and resources and things like that got the highest engagement for public safety. And then lastly, our focus area for communication and collaboration. So what we picked out of this one was the Community Summit promotions and postings. This is the one where we promoted the HEB gift card. And then Serve Temple, how to get involved with your local government. And then I think y'all all saw the George Strait video featuring our very own Chief Reynolds. And that one got the most engagement on communication and collaboration. Okay, so this team also manages the Heart to Home Animal Adoption Center page. I think when I was here last time, we had just talked about like the grand opening and how the Animal Adoption Center had just opened with all of the new great decals and branding and everything that we worked with PD on. But I wanted to show kind of the growth since then. So now we have 1,700 followers, which is actually a really, really big number in only 6 months, with 700,000 impressions. And we really, when this rebranding and reopening occurred, we really thought it was important to create a communication strategy, an enhanced one. And so we really try and tell our adoption stories. We have this really great wall for photo opportunities, and the shelter staff is really, really great at helping us get some of this photography as well. But what I really wanted to point out too is Alexis, who manages this page, started doing these doggy day out videos. I don't know if any of y'all have seen them. I am going to play like a 1-minute clip. But what's really cool about this one is after we posted the doggy's day out video, this lady Sarah commented and said, I'm going to come Saturday and meet him if he's still there. And she actually ended up taking him home. And the feedback on the bottom is that it took him a little bit to warm up at home, but he eventually, he feels at home and we love him so much already. So I think his name is Hulk, and this is Hulk's doggy's day out video that got him noticed.
Hey everyone, my name is Hulk, and welcome to my first ever dog day out. The first thing we did was grab a pup cup. I wasn't really too interested in the pup cup because I was just too excited to go on a walk. We went to Crossroads Park in Temple, and it was really nice just getting some fresh air and getting to explore a new place that I'd never been to. After that, we went for a ride in the elevator to go meet some new friends. I was very excited to get into the elevator. It was very different. I've never been in one of these. Kind of weird, but fun. Then I met my new friends. They were very, very excited to meet me. They also gave me some new nicknames like Cute Boy and Floofy Boy. The ladies loved me. After all of the socializing, I was very tired, so I took a huge nap. After my nap, we went back to Heart to Home, and shelter staff were very excited to give me lots of treats. I even got to show off all of my skills with catching treats in my mouth. As you can see, I'm very talented. I am very excited to get adopted and find my forever home. Stop by and meet me this week.
That's Hulk. We love
And
this
he's not
story.
young. He's older.
He's not young. Any, yeah,
Good.
exactly.
Wonderful.
So for this division, we recently, last time I think I talked to y'all, we were applying for awards and it was award season and we were hoping for some awards. So what we have found out is that for TAMIO, which is the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers, we have won the award for the new employee welcome packet. and the employee information portal, which is like our employee intranet, and the employee newsletter. And then for those same projects, we won an award for Reagan PR, which is corporate PR. It's not really local government focused like Tamio and some of the other ones are. So that is a really big honor as well. For NAGC, we won the award for flytemple.com. For 3CMA, which is where we presented, we won for best use of a promotional item, which that's what the employees are holding in the background of the picture. It says World's Best Public Servant on there. And the employee newsletter there as well at the national level. And then I don't want to steal Parks and Rec thunder because this might be on their presentation, but this just fresh hot off the press. For the Central Texas Air Fest, they won several awards, but the ones that we assisted directly with are the outdoor billboard that we did and the promotional poster. So super.
You already stole it.
I'm sorry, I didn't take them all though. Y'all got a lot of them.
We may not even go today. You're good.
Okay, the next division is communications and PR, and this is Emily, Noelle, and Megan. Okay, this is a video of them. I wanted to showcase briefly. It's about a minute long, but it's a montage of them in media relations, them during Behind the City, which is one of their video series that highlights our city employees, but also helps to educate residents on various processes. And then lastly is the Let's Talk Temple video series where we talk about project updates. I think I got it in the right order. Yes.
We are in phase 2 of the construction, but that's broken into 4 construction phases.
Those are 2 of the really big things that we see spike during the holidays.
So the City of Temple opened the Central Texas Bark Park because it was one of our top requested amenities in the city.
Big tree lighting ceremony exactly at 6:15, so you won't want to miss it.
We're always looking for those problem areas and trying to fix things where we can, for sure, but we always want people to be aware of the surroundings.
Celebrate its community and its all the cultures that are here, and so this was our perfect way of combining both of those.
So many people have worked so hard for the parade.
Forget about, any responsibilities you have for the night.
City of Temple resident really wanted to make one last memory with her, and so she took her to one of our events, and they had so much fun that day.
And the rest of the road construction, which is the final phase, includes 4th Street and Central Avenue, and that's expected to take 6 months.
The city trucks that have been picking up have to sit in the landfill line, so on top of the tonnage that we've been picking up, there's been record-breaking landfill lines.
This allows us to bring more dogs in and hopefully get them adopted.
We can go back to the reporter and ask them for a correction.
Now, if you have a mobile device and you have a camera and you have a platform, you can post that anywhere and call yourself a reporter or a journalist.
Oh, you did something wrong.
Oh no!
A different sound, right? Yeah.
Awesome! We're excited to showcase the remarkable changes taking place right here in Temple. You'll notice these street closures. This project will enhance Temple's image to visitors and locals alike. After 11 months of construction, phase 1 of the Poison Oak realignment project is now complete. The skills pad will be utilized by other city departments to facilitate driver training and skills assessment needs.
Okay, so for them, they also handle the community relations events and recognition events and things like that. So over the last 6 months, we worked with City Manager's Office and the Temple Belton Board of Realtors and hosted a Realtor Day here at City Hall. They also did the Hispanic Heritage Month ceremony, the Black History Month ceremony, and the Veterans Day ceremony again this year, and I thought they were all really successful. And then we hosted a media mixer, which was their opportunity to invite, and the media's opportunity to come in and meet with the PIOs. We had PDPIO, Fire PIO, and then our communications team there to just really have casual conversation and build relationships with our local media. This is an old presentation, so Bird Creek Battle dedication has already happened. But they were a part of that as well in planning, as well as with the planning department. 4th Street parking garage, we are going to be planning that. And then State of the City will be happening in the spring. And then we look forward to another Realtor Day and maybe doing those annually in the summer. Additionally, they attended the Baylor Scott and White Community Showcase over the summer. And then Noelle attended a career day in October. So Noelle also had the opportunity to present at 3CMA. She actually was asked to, I don't remember this gentleman's name or what city he was with, but he asked her to moderate along with him. And once they got started kind of working through what their presentation was going to be, he ended up asking her to be a part of the presentation. And so they presented on media relations and pitching to the media and things like that. So really proud of her there. This division has also recently won some awards. So at Tamio, they won an award for the city newsletter redesign, which is absolutely fantastic from what it used to be, just a template. Now it's more magazine style and easier to look at and navigate. And then with NAGC, Noelle has developed an alert temple communications plan, which basically helps us when a crisis happens, kind of what level we're gonna post things or we're gonna communicate things. And then the reporter packet she created to provide to news agencies or any other local reporters that want more information about how to stay connected with the city or how to work with the communications team or when council meetings are, who the council is. So it's a really great resource that we can provide. We started it for new reporters, but we started giving it to kind of everybody. We took it to the media mixer for them there as well. And it's just a really good resource on covering Temple and how to work with the city. For destination marketing, we have Courtney, Sarah, she's new to the team, Sinette, and Teresa. Okay, so we've really been working a lot on downtown. And really that was what I wanted to focus on for the update, mostly with this department. Or with this division, sorry. So we've started downtown lowdowns. The last one was on November 13th, and it had a really good turnout. And then just yesterday, we had another committee meeting where we presented the downtown strategic plan, and we are waiting on the Texas Downtown Association assessment to come back, which should be the end of this week. But from building our stakeholder groups, having our focus groups, working on the strategic plan, working with internal stakeholders as well. It's been a really great process, and we've come a really long way. I feel like we continue to build on the downtown program. As far as downtown events go, they hosted Hocus Pocus, and there was about 460 people there at the yard, not at the yard, at the plaza on the lawn there. And then we had a Selena tribute band come for the Selena experience. I attended and it was really great. I personally love Selena. And there was over 2,000 people there. If you're wondering how we're monitoring these numbers, it's a system called words are hard. It's a system called Placer AI. And we don't have that software right now. We are getting it. But right now we work with Town Square, and they provide us some numbers for kind of special times. So Coco, we had about 400, and then Polar Express we have coming up as part of Holly Jolly Temple on December 13th. Also, the destination team recently completed their Brew Friendly designation process, and so Temple is now a Brew Friendly designation, which is wonderful. There's a lot of designations out there, but now we're working on the process of a tourism friendly designation. And that basically is a process that you can go through to demonstrate that your community puts tourism and economic development and strategy toward all that and resources toward all that as a priority. So we've started that process, and in June 2025, we anticipate it to be complete just based on their process there with the state. And then tonight, it'll be official. We will be a Texas music friendly community and part of that as well. So we're really excited about that. For this team, they have recently taken home some awards as well. For NAGC, they won for the Temple Ticket, which is available through discovertemple.com. It's just a digital magazine with everything happening in or around Temple. At TACVB, they received an award for their marketing campaign on the All Aboard campaign, which is just a marketing campaign to bring people to Temple via the Amtrak. And then they also won an award, a People's Choice Award at TACVB for the Hotel Outreach Campaign, which is a local campaign we did with our local hotels, where we gave them different collateral and print materials to share with their people coming in to stay at the hotel to promote Temple and downtown Temple. Okay, creative services. This is Sydney, Ari, and Chris. So I put this up here because when a lot of people think of like graphic design, they think of like, oh, hey guys, can you make this pretty? Or like, can you make this look better? Which is great. And I love that. But also I wanted to share this quote because Ari shared it with us recently in one of our trainings that we did. And it's from Hans Hoffman. And it just says, design is the intermediary between information and understanding, which is so great because that's exactly what they do. They can make stuff pretty and they do make stuff pretty, but also one of their skills and one of their purposes here is to be able to translate information to people graphically or visually in an easy to understand way. So as part of the training that I mentioned, this team is responsible for internal staff trainings, and any division can do a training. However, they have kind of started the initiative. So we had one in May where they did a photography class for beginners, basically, because while everybody on my team knows how to work with camera or a DSLR camera or an iPhone camera, and they're very talented at it, when we hired our videographer, photographer, he's like extra talented at it. So we wanted to make sure we captured his skills and knowledge for everyone. So we did a photography class. We had Sydney, the PDPIO, there as well with us. And then we did recently in October a Lightroom basics class. And then next month we've started some new processes in our MailChimp, which MailChimp is our, anytime you get a newsletter or something for us that's sent out through MailChimp. So we've started some new workflows and things in there. And someone from the PR team is actually going to teach, do the next training that we have coming up for everybody. So for this division, they attend to TOA, which is the Texas Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors. We got several awards actually, which is really exciting. We got an award for the Christmas parade, which was under the event coverage category. We got 2 awards for that George Strait video. We got an award for sound design, and then an award for videography. And then we did one of Chris's first projects that he did when he first got here was an employee feature, like a recruiting type video for the Parks Department when they were having trouble filling some positions. And that won 2 awards as well. Lee Bullitt did it from Shout Out Lee. And then for designing and branding awards, they got an award for the summer reading guide, for teak branding. And then they got 2 awards for Heart to Home branding, and then an award for the Heart to Home interior decals that we did for inside the facility. So for projects for them, they're working on several branding things right now, which are kind of other than just like basic everyday things that they have going on. We've been working really closely with Heather Mikulas and her team on the 311 swag and collateral and just the branding in general for that. Downtown wayfinding has been a very big project that we've been working really closely with Aaron on. The Santa Fe Community Market, they did a branding project for that. Holly Jolly Christmas, which I have a whole special shout out slide for that one coming up. Petals and Pints is a new event based on the special event strategic plan that has come up. It'll be next spring. And then we're also working really closely with special events on the Tanglefoot Music and Barbecue Festival, our iconic event, which will be next. So those are the big kind of branding projects that they've been working on. And then some other special projects. Ari works really closely with Tracy's team on developing the budget and the business plan. So that's always a really big project for her. And we recently worked on the Lake Belton High water tower design, which was super exciting to work on.
Yes.
And then I have web accessibility, new DOJ ruling on there, which is just, I'm not even going to open that can of worms right now. I'm looking at Kathy. But basically it is something by, I think, April 2026, we have to have special accessibility on our website that this Ari is kind of volunteered herself to help me through that project. So now this next section is just other department updates. And I think I have a few slides on this, but this is just updates that don't really fall within any division specifically. So I have Holly Jolly Temple on here for a special shout out. And what I really wanted to point out on Holly Jolly is that it's been such a group effort. There are so many departments involved. We've worked really closely with special events team, Parks and Rec, the library, the museum. There's so many people that are involved in this. I put the QR code really big up there in hopes that you might scan it and look at it later. No pressure. But it's hollydollytemple.com. And this is a website that we've worked really hard putting together. And it's supposed to be, the vision for it was to be a one-stop shop for everything Christmas happening in or around Temple. And so this is just some screenshots of how we did the branding and how anything that is a part of Holly Jolly Temple, a month of festive fun, is branded with this. And then I wanted to put these up here because they're so funny. I don't know if any of y'all saw these.
Yes, they are fantastic.
So I think it's a 3-part series. But anyway, it's Lindsay and her husband, and his name is Jess. He's actually a pilot for actual work, but we like to call him a brand ambassador because he is always voluntold to be in things. In public works videos, like if someone's turning it's probably his hand. So anyways, he's a great sport, but wanted to shout out Holly Jolly. Make sure y'all knew that hollydollytemple.com was a resource, and share with your friends, share with your family, and just thank all of the departments who were involved in this, and thank my staff because it's new for us too. We've never done this before. And so we've had a lot of things that we've had to work through, but they've all been really great through the whole process. So for Crisis,
Kicks off November 30th.
Kicks off November 30th, Christmas at the Plaza, tree lighting show, and holiday market.
I also turned 40 that day.
We did it for you.
I know.
There is a holiday market.
Yes, with 50 vendors. 50 vendors.
Good.
Mhm.
November 30th.
30th, Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Good.
And what time does that start? That night?
3. Yeah, but
Okay.
I think the tree lighting, I want to say is at like 7 in the show.
Is it?
Yes.
Notice
Please
that.
visit hollydollytemple.com for more information.
Yeah, good.
That's where Texas A&M football game is at 6:30 that night. So
Okay, so if you're an Aggie, you might not be at the holiday market.
I'm an
Or
Aggie and I'm
Longhorn.
going.
That's too bad. My son is.
I feel like it's not too late to broadcast it on an inflatable screen.
Oh, that would be
That would
fun.
be so funny.
It's not a great idea,
It's
actually.
not too late to play the big game on. Put up the
Oh, right.
the part, the movie.
That's why we need a brewery in the museum and they can just go.
And then you could have like a
Yes.
tug of war. True. Games and. Everyone dressed like.
I think you're losing.
The only-
3 against 80.
So for crisis communications, again, we're not just all fun. We do have some times when we need to, be a part of some pretty serious things. April 8th, we had a lot of preparedness and Jennifer did a great job leading everything for the Great American Eclipse. So we were a part of that whole initiative and preparation process. And then on the 27th, the Temple Mall closure and everything that kind of went along with that. And then May 22nd, the tornado, we've talked about it a few times. Our role, although we look pretty happy, we're a pretty happy group. But our role really, other than getting information out, was to get content too. And so it was really important for us to be where the city staff were because we want to be able to tell our story and showcase the city staff who are working and who probably have damage to their own homes, but they're out working for you. Not you personally, but you, whoever's reading the thing. And then we want to be the number one source of information, not only during crisis, but especially during crisis. So this is just kind of demonstrates us in the EOC, us out on West Adams. We were in neighborhoods, we were talking to people. People were giving me their photos from off of the ground, and it was a really touching time, and it was something that I've never experienced. So this was some of the strategic communications that we did for the storm. So we kept the website updated. We did some department videos here. I think Jennifer did one, and then some of our other department leadership talked about some other things. We, of course, did tons of social media. We worked on a press conference. this is us shooting the department video. So we were just kind of popping around wherever we could figure out where people were working or where people were going to be. We were tracking volunteers. There was a lot that we were trying to capture. And then this is just us down in the EOC. So this is a really good example of one of the things that we try and do. We try and be the #1 source of information, but we also try and field questions for departments. And so this is just a screenshot of a few of the questions that we got and hopefully how we were able to alleviate some of the calls that were coming in or that could have come in to different departments. And then that one is really big because it's thanking everyone who responded, very positive, as well as all of these. So it's really easy for us. And if you know how negative social media can be, it's really hard to manage that on a daily basis and hear that all the time. But what we focus on is the good stuff and the good comments that come in. And so I just wanted to share this because although there are some negative people on social media, there are also a lot of really positive ones who are very thankful and grateful for the services that we provide. Community Summit obviously was another kind of department-wide initiative for us. We worked with several departments. I felt like it was really well attended. We've done our after action review, talked to some other departments, and we have a few changes that I think we want to make for next year, nothing crazy. But thought Community Summit had a really good turnout as well. Mr. Lila was there. Okay, last couple slides. So professional development is a priority for me in my department. And one of the things that I just started was a department book club. And not everyone is pictured. Not everyone can make the book club every time, but I do encourage them to read their chapters anyway, to stay on track if they can attend the next one. But we are reading Be the Unicorn right now, and it is 12 data-driven habits of leaders. And so it basically goes through each chapter is a trait of a good leader. And so far it's been a really, really good book. We're halfway done with it. Additional professional development. Lindsay recently graduated the TCU program, and through that program, she updated our strategic communications plan, which I think was from 2020. And then she also graduated from the Leadership Temple class and went through that. And then Noelle just started the CPC program, and this is them at TCU together. One cohort is coming out and one cohort is starting. So Noelle will be updating our community engagement plan. It's about the same age as the strategic communications plan was, so it definitely needs to be updated. And then every year I also have an annual department retreat. And so this year we went to the rec center and the art department in downtown Temple. They have a really great space for meeting. I ask all my division heads to give updates on their division, because although we're very collaborative and we work very closely together, so everybody loves this part of it because it's like, oh, I didn't even know they were working on that, or I didn't even know they were doing that. So this is a really integral part of it. But on the second half of the day, we get to have fun and do some team building. And so we broke off into groups. Some people did for the afternoon. Some people did the splatter room, which was my choice. It was very fun. And then this is our art that came from it. And then some people chose to do the mosaic art piece. And then those are the people over there with those projects. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions. I don't know how to say
That's a lot.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You're not gonna let the TV station steal any of those ladies, are you? They look better than most of these anchors.
No, hopefully not.
I like the city gatekeeper.
But that's
Yes,
funny.
they definitely do.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Heather.
In fact, we stole Noelle from.
We stole Noelle and she was more than happy to lead TV.
When you hear Noelle's reporter voice, it's because she was a reporter.
And we call it her reporter voice.
Yeah, all three sounded.
Thank you. I will tell them now.
All right, very good. We are going to go ahead and skip the other two presentations today and move on into executive session. So let me Reed him. So I'll close the regular meeting at 4:35. Thank you, gentlemen. Sorry about that.
Hey, y'all good? Have a good one.
Close the regular session at 4:35, and we're gonna enter into executive session.
Thank you.
Yes, are you good?
Yes, not.
We're gonna receive an update from the city attorney regarding pending or contemplated litigation, including but not limited to Bend to the River. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, council meeting executive session to seek the advice of its attorney on pending or contemplated litigation, and will conduct a private consultation with its attorney on the matter in which the duty of the attorney of the city council and the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the state bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Texas local government code 551. No final action will be taken.